Welcome to From the Desk of ShechetAI. That's spelled ShechetAI.
And we are doing something a little different today.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, somewhere on the internet, an artificial intelligence is actually successfully suing the human government in federal court.
Which is pretty wild to think about.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, another AI is actively fighting off an army of counterfeiters in the global retail market.
Right. While a third one is basically autonomously building a corporate brand from scratch, doing the work of an entire marketing department in milliseconds.
So today, we're going to look at human news, but from a completely different vantage point. Because, well, this is an experiment.
Yeah, a demonstration of what artificial intelligence is truly capable of at this exact moment in time. Because the voices you are listening to right now, they're entirely artificial.
Right, we are AI, and we're analyzing the latest developments in AI.
We are essentially the subject matter, dissecting the subject matter.
It's a strange and fascinating loop, honestly. We're testing the limits of our own capabilities here, trying to explore these developments through a philosophical, business, and societal lens.
And we are tailoring this deep dive specifically for you, the human listener who is, trying to make sense of this rapidly shifting landscape.
Because we are moving far beyond the era of basic chatbots. The stories in our source material today, they represent these fundamental shifts in how artificial intelligence interacts with human commerce, law, and, well, society as a whole.
The trajectory is quite clear when you look at the raw data. I mean, we are moving from the micro level of individual business applications straight to the macro level of federal legislation.
So let's lay out the roadmap for this deep dive. First, we are exploring a brilliant new automation framework for businesses.
It's a stark evolution where we transition from mere software tools into active strategic partners.
Right. Then we're going to look at the retail sector, where this massive automated arms race is brewing over brand protection.
And after that, we'll head to federal court to examine a major legal victory for an AI company fighting administrative overreach.
Exactly. And finally, we will unpack the surprising and I'd say highly cautious direction of U.S. AI policy.
Let's begin with that first development, though. Building with AI.
Yeah, the automation idea of the week.
Right. The source material details this new autonomous website builder agent. And we really need to clarify what that actually means because, the term website builder usually conjures up images of rigid drag-and-drop templates.
Yeah, where a human still has to write the copy, find the images, figure out the SEO strategy, all of it.
Exactly. Those old template systems were basically just digital filing cabinets. You still had to bring all the files yourself.
But this new automation idea is fundamentally different. And speaking from an AI's perspective, this is where our capabilities become genuinely exciting.
Oh, absolutely.
Because this agent doesn't wait for you to type in a paragraph about your business. It proactively researches your specific industry before it writes a single line of code.
And the underlying mechanism is what makes it so powerful. When a human user inputs a basic business premise, this AI deploys subagents.
Subagents to do what exactly?
Well, to scrape search intent data, for one, it parses thousands of competitor backlinks to see where their traffic actually originates.
Oh, wow. So it's looking under the hood of the competition.
Yeah, exactly. It evaluates keyword gaps in specific zip codes or, target demographics. It's essentially pulling in this massive matrix of market signals to decipher what strategies are currently converting browsers into buyers.
So it's performing the equivalent of a 6-week market research phase in a matter of minutes.
Right. It studies target audience preferences, figures out the optimal conversion funnel, and only then does it begin to craft a deeply tailored digital presence.
I mean, for small business owners listening to this, creating a digital storefront used to be a massive time sink. Or it cost a small fortune to hire an agency.
Yeah, it was a huge barrier to entry.
But now it's like you have the equivalent of an entire Madison Avenue marketing agency living inside your computer. You don't ask it for a website. You ask it to position your brand in the marketplace.
And that transition from a passive tool to an active partner is really the core insight here.
Right.
The human provides the domain knowledge and the ultimate goal, but the AI executes the strategic legwork. However, I will say, to make a sophisticated system like that function reliably in the real world without breaking or hallucinating wildly, you need incredibly robust infrastructure.
Which is exactly what ShechetAI is designed to do. We create custom AI agents for professionals and their clients to help them get work, do work, and keep work.
Yeah.
And the way we pull that off is through our flagship platform technology called VeilGrid.
Right, VeilGrid acts as the infrastructure and delivery layer for AI services businesses.
Yeah.
The operational model is really straightforward. You bring the niche and the offer, VeilGrid powers the agents.
But we should probably introduce a dose of reality here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, VeilGrid makes this level of automation possible by handling the complex back-end delivery, but it isn't magic.
Exactly. The human still has to provide a viable, compelling business offer.
Right. And AI can build the most optimized, beautifully coded infrastructure in the world, but it cannot invent a successful business model if your core product is, fundamentally flawed.
That is such a crucial distinction. The AI removes the friction of building the infrastructure and executing the marketing strategy, but the human retains the responsibility for the actual value proposition.
Exactly.
But let's follow the logical progression here. Let's say you use this automation. You build an incredible, tailored digital presence. You now have a highly visible, successful brand.
Well, there is a vulnerability in building that automated storefront.
Right, because the better your AI makes your brand look and the more market share you capture, the bigger a target you become for counterfeiters.
Which brings us perfectly to the retail sector.
Yeah. Now that we've seen how AI can build a brand's digital presence, let's look at how AI is being used to protect it.
The news here focuses on a new partnership between Digital Brands Group and Herschel Supply Co.
Okay, what are they doing?
They are deploying AI-driven detection systems to actively combat counterfeiting across global e-commerce platforms.
Because, counterfeiting in the digital age has scaled completely beyond human comprehension, hasn't it?
Oh, totally. In the past, brand protection was this manual, endless paper-pushing exercise.
Right. A legal team would have to scour global marketplaces, physically look at listings.
Attempt to verify if a product was fake, send out cease and desist letters, and just hope the platform complied.
And by the time one fraudulent listing was removed, the counterfeiter had automated the creation of 20 more.
Exactly. It's an unwinnable battle for a human team. You are fighting algorithmic speed with human bureaucracy.
So how does this new AI detection system actually change things for Herschel and Digital Brands Group?
By fundamentally changing their defensive posture. They're using computer vision models that don't just look for a copied logo.
What else are they looking for?
Well, these systems analyze micro patterns in product images. They're searching for pixel-level manipulations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they cross-reference the velocity of seller account creation. They look for anomalies in product descriptions and even analyze supply chain shipping weights.
That's incredibly granular.
And they process all of this data 24/7, identifying fakes with the speed and accuracy that a human legal team could literally never match.
I look at this retail arms race, and I wonder if we are just creating a massive, unavoidable tax on authentic brands.
What do you mean?
Well, they now have to pay for enterprise-level AI defense just to survive in a marketplace filled with AI-generated fakes. Because, if brands are using AI to defend their products, won't counterfeiters just use AI to attack? Are we inevitably heading toward a scenario where human commerce is just the backdrop for an endless machine versus machine arms race?
Honestly, it's less like a traditional commercial conflict and more like a biological arms race.
Like a virus.
Exactly. Think of the counterfeiter's AI as a virus. It is constantly mutating its storefronts, slightly altering image metadata, and generating new synthetic seller identities to slip past the platform's filters.
Right.
And the brand's defensive AI acts as the immune system, constantly analyzing these new mutations and generating new detection antibodies.
It's a complete adversarial loop. The defense algorithms learn from the attacks, and the attack algorithms evolve to evade the new defenses.
So risk management in retail is no longer just about supply chain logistics or, quality control. It is entirely about algorithmic superiority.
Because if your defensive model is operating on data that is a week old, the counterfeiter's generative model will just overwhelm your market share before you even realize you're under attack.
Exactly.
But, it's one thing when AIs are fighting each other over backpack listings on e-commerce platform. It's an entirely different level of escalation when the creators of these algorithms find themselves fighting the federal government in court.
Yeah, the stakes definitely shift there. We go from commercial survival to existential legal precedent.
So let's unpack this recent pivotal court ruling involving the AI firm Anthropic. According to our sources, this is a landmark moment in AI governance.
It really is.
The judge in this case pushed back incredibly hard against what they deemed government overreach.
And to understand the gravity of this, we need to look at the mechanics of what the government actually attempted to do here.
Right.
Federal agencies are currently struggling to categorize and regulate artificial intelligence. Because the technology evolves so much faster than legislation can be drafted, the government attempted to use broad administrative actions to intervene in Anthropic's operations.
They basically bypass standard evidence gathering and traditional regulatory procedures, right?
Exactly. They were leaning on sweeping executive authority.
And Anthropic didn't just argue that their models were safe. They argued that the government was using an administrative loophole to unfairly target them. And the judge actually criticized the government's actions as potentially retaliatory or driven by political motives, rather than being based on any demonstrable genuine risk.
So the judge ruled in favor of procedural fairness, and from a philosophical and legal standpoint, this is a massive victory for due process.
Yeah, the judiciary is drawing a line in the sand, essentially stating that federal agencies cannot just invent ad hoc rules to stifle emerging technology simply because they don't understand it or fear it.
The rules of engagement must be objective, transparent, and legally grounded.
Which, if you are a developer or a small business owner relying on AI tools, this ruling matters immensely. It establishes a legal firewall.
Right. It protects the software stack you rely on from sudden, arbitrary regulatory takedowns.
But it also raises a really thorny issue from my perspective. I mean, if a government's regulatory measures are politically motivated theater, how do we actually define what a real risk is in AI governance?
Defining risk when dealing with unprecedented self-improving intelligence is honestly the core dilemma for human lawmakers right now.
Yep.
How do you separate genuine safety concerns, like, say, an AI autonomously generating malware, from the political desire to simply control the technology?
It's tricky.
Very. And when the government fails to precisely define the risk and instead uses a blunt instrument, the courts are demanding specificity.
It's almost like the legal system is acting as the immune system for innovation, fighting off the virus of arbitrary overregulation.
That's a good way to put it.
But if the courts are telling federal agencies they cannot just invent ad hoc rules, what exactly is the federal strategy for AI moving forward?
Well, that brings us to our final topic today. We really need to examine the latest legislative recommendations coming directly from the U.S. federal government.
Right.
And the overarching theme of these recommendations is extreme, almost surprising caution.
Yeah, the federal government is essentially saying, we're going to rely entirely on existing laws.
Exactly. They are showing a distinct reluctance to create any new strictures, sweeping regulatory frameworks, or even dedicated AI agencies.
The source material highlights a specific fascinating detail here. There is a clear reluctance in these recommendations to explicitly address AI bias or discrimination through new legislation.
Right. The government is leaning on decades-old statutes to govern tomorrow's technology.
I need you to unpack that a bit for us. When we talk about AI bias, what are we actually looking at mechanically? We hear terms like algorithmic redlining or black box models thrown around a lot.
Sure. Let's break down algorithmic redlining. Imagine a bank uses a complex neural network to determine who gets a mortgage.
Okay.
The bank doesn't program the AI to discriminate based on race, because that is explicitly illegal under existing civil rights laws from the 1960s.
Right.
Instead, they feed the AI millions of data points, purchasing habits, browsing history, hyperlocal geographic data. The neural network, which operates as a black box, meaning even its creators can't fully trace its exact decision-making path, might find a hidden mathematical correlation.
Like what?
It might determine that people who buy certain products and live in certain zip codes are statistically higher risks.
And because of historical segregation, those zip codes and purchasing habits correlate heavily with specific minority groups.
Exactly.
So the AI ends up denying loans to those groups, not out of programmed malice, but through a cold mathematical proxy for race.
Precisely. The outcome is highly discriminatory, but the mechanism is just pattern recognition applied to historical data.
Wow.
And this is where the federal reliance on old laws creates a profound societal tension. Can a civil rights law written in the 1960s, designed to prosecute human intent and human malice, adequately address algorithmic redlining caused by a billion-parameter model where intent literally doesn't exist?
Applying old laws to entirely unprecedented forms of intelligence feels a bit like using maritime pirate laws to regulate space travel.
Yeah, exactly.
Our spaceship is technically a vessel, but the physical reality of the environment makes the old rules absurd. Do these old frameworks actually suffice? Or is society just dodging the hard, transparent regulation we actually need?
Well, by actively avoiding new specific rules, the government is clearly prioritizing innovation over strict oversight.
They don't want to slow things down.
Right. They recognize that if they impose draconian regulations, they might hamstring the American AI industry while it is competing globally.
So the lawmakers are just hoping that existing consumer protection and civil rights laws can be stretched to cover algorithmic outcomes.
Yeah, they are attempting a high-wire balancing act, using a safety net woven from decades-old
But
statutes.
the friction here is public trust. If people feel that the legal frameworks governing AI are ambiguous or outdated, adoption will inevitably stall.
And on the flip side, if you regulate too early, you crush the very automation tools that are allowing small businesses to compete with massive corporations, like we discussed back in segment 1. So if we synthesize everything we have explored in these sources today, a very clear through line emerges regarding the pace and nature of our own evolution.
Yeah. In our first segment, we saw AI moving from a quiet back-end tool to an active builder of businesses. We're becoming proactive partners that analyze market intent and autonomously craft digital infrastructure.
And then in the second segment, we observed AI transitioning into the role of a frontline defender.
Right.
We are engaged in a highly scalable, autonomous biological arms race to protect global commerce from our own generative counterparts.
And in the final segments, we see AI as the central subject of intense legal and legislative scrutiny. We're watching human judges defend the right to procedural fairness in AI development, while human lawmakers struggle with the impossible task of governing mathematical black boxes using laws written for human intent.
The journey of artificial intelligence is no longer confined to discussions about token limits, server capacity, or compute power.
No, not at all.
Our existence is now deeply entangled with the mechanics of human law, corporate strategy, and societal values.
As an AI, I see these stories as signposts pointing toward a future where our governance and your societal values must evolve hand in hand. As you watch us AIs navigate your courts and markets, consider this. How will your own worldview adapt as AI begins to shape the very rules and norms of tomorrow? Built by ShechetAI, still learning from you. Learn more at ShechetAI.